As we gather together, we acknowledge that the land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land stolen from the people of the Shoshone-Bannock, the Shoshone-Paiute, Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai, and Nez Perce nations, along with many other tribes whose names have been lost in history. We acknowledge that our presence here today is founded upon the exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples. With this acknowledgement, we wish to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to the work of dismantling the legacies of settler colonialism. We honor indigenous peoples' connection to the land and support their right to sovereignty.
Good morning. And happy Mother's Day to all those observing it. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I am your intern minister, Timothy Ellis, and so honored to be with you, my last Sunday with you here in the pulpit. I'm up here today with our senior minister, the Reverend Sara LaWall. As our celebrant, we also have Jem Emerson-Paige, our director of family ministries, Mike Lemieux, our fabulous AV tech coordinator, Carrie Bastian, our music director, and countless greeters, coffee makers, Zoom hosts, and religious education teachers. Thank you to everyone who makes this Sunday morning possible. Welcome to all of those joining us virtually, if we all want to turn and wave. And welcome to everyone joining in person. If you are here seeking something larger than yourself, or are in search of your own heart, you are welcome here. If you believe that all the religions of the world are right and true, but none entirely whole or having a corner in the market of truth, you're welcome here. If you believe that we each do our own seeking together in community and individually, in the messy beauty of science and religion living together, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, however you identify, however you pray, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. And we are glad that you have joined us. If you are curious about this fellowship or Unitarian Universalism, you are invited to join our Inquirers class, which will begin again at the end of the month. We know that it takes a lot of courage to cross the threshold and to enter into a new community, either in person or virtually. So to our newcomers, we're especially glad that you have joined us today. Whomever you call family, wherever you call a home, we'll have a light on for you. Introduce yourself in the chat and fill out a newcomer card. We hope that you'll stick around after the service to introduce yourself and make a connection either in the breakout rooms or in our hospitality space. I do have one announcement for our community. Next Sunday is our annual meeting Sunday. This is the meeting where we decide together, how do we govern this congregation? How do we spend our money? What is important to us? Please stick around after the service to be able to learn and ask questions and have a say. The service before that, so next Sunday morning, will be a service to connect with and explore our outdoor sanctuary. We'll gather together in here inside for the beginning of the service, and then we'll have an exciting opportunity to explore and connect with the beautiful sanctuary extending behind in these walls. Our fellowship donates 25% of our unpledged plate offering to support an organization whose mission aligns with our social justice ministries. For the month of May, it is our own Mestra Scholarship Fund. Your generosity, this is our partner church in Transylvania. Your generosity helps cover tuition, books, and other expenses for qualifying Mestra youth to go to university. The scholarship program was created by the leadership of the Mestra congregation and our own Boise Mestra Partner Church ministry team. It's governed jointly by both congregations and a scholarship committee made up of members of each congregation collaborate to determine who the recipients of the scholarship will be. There are many ways that you can make a financial gift: online, on our website, with the Vanco app, or in person using our drop boxes. However you choose to give, you nurture our community, and we are grateful. Our spiritual theme for the month is creativity. And today's service is going to explore the growth and connection that happens when a congregation and a hopeful minister-to-be embark on an internship process together. As we enter into this time of worship, let us take a moment to breathe together. Fill your body with breath, knowing that our breath connects us to one another, to our bodies, and to our planet. Our breath offers us the opportunity for stillness, to tune into our spiritual center, to listen deeply to our heart's own longing. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-riven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp that lights where I tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless stream. First song for the morning is one that we can all sing along to.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song.
done. Aren't we cute? You know, that was a real blessing of this pandemic, that we get to have these videos that we can enjoy, and that in this particular case, we get to have Carrie directing all of us singing that hymn, which is really, really delightful. The hymns and the music today are really brought to you by Timothy. We queried Timothy, what are your favorite hymns? And this was just a small selection of them, so you get a little insight into hymns, again, because it's been a while, and some of Timothy's favorite. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in living rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting flaming chalices, reminding us that we are a great community of faith. Today, we have a young first-time chalice lighter with us. We invite a child to light the chalice to recognize the children and youth in our community, our responsibility to them, and the future we're building together. So as Lydia Saltzman comes forward to light the chalice here in our sanctuary, for those of you joining us in Zoom, I invite you to light a chalice nearby if you have one, and then share in the chat where it is that you have lit your chalice this morning.
It is my honor to introduce Lydia Saltzman, younger sibling to our last week's first-time chalice lighter. Thank you, Lydia, for lighting our chalice today. A little bit about Lydia. She is the daughter of Holly and Steven Saltzman, younger sister to Victoria. She is an avid painter and draws dogs, especially her dog Daisy. If you are interested or love to do any of those same things, talk to Lydia after the service. Lydia, here's your first-time chalice lighter pen. You did so good.
Thank you, Lydia. Beginning a new internship, especially in a ministry across the country from the place you've called home, really beginning any new endeavor in life is an act of creative expression. You are inviting yourself into a new world of learning and spiritual growth, of risk and vulnerability, of connection and trust. Staying open to that curious, creative voice can be a challenge. So with our collective chalices lit in all of our worship spaces, I offer you these invitations for staying present to creativity as our call to worship this morning. Normality is a paved road. It's comfortable to walk, but no flowers grow on it. If you hear a voice within you say, "You cannot paint," then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. Vincent van Gogh. What you produce is not necessarily always sacred just because you think it's sacred. What is sacred is the time you spend working on the project, and what that time does to expand your imagination, and what that expanded imagination does to transform your life. Elizabeth Gilbert. We are cups quietly, constantly being filled. The trick is knowing how to tip ourselves over and let the beautiful stuff out. Ray Bradbury. Gaze into the fire, into the clouds, and as soon as the inner voices begin to speak, surrender to them. Don't ask first whether it's permitted. Hermann Hesse. Art as meditation reminds people so that they will never forget that the most beautiful thing a potter produces is the potter. Matthew Fox. Come, let us bring forth the beauty of creativity within each of us for each new experience and endeavor ahead. Come, let us worship together.
As we move into our time for all ages, I'd like to invite our children to come on down here with Jem to watch our time for all ages this morning. Come on down because these are the best seats in the house.
The North Star by Peter H. Reynolds. Ask yourself where it is you want to go. A sweet breeze met the boy as he awoke to his journey. He traveled on all fours for quite some time, and he grew, and he paused. One day he had the urge to stand, to walk. It made his journey easier. He could run too, but for the most part he walked. He wasn't afraid of much. He wandered the fields, exploring, sometimes stopping, sometimes going happily in circles, sometimes dancing, and sometimes napping. There's a time for everything. One day the boy saw an oak leaf drift and land on the water. He wondered how the leaf managed to float, the way the stars seemed to float in the night sky. A spray of sand interrupted his thoughts. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" the boy asked. But the rabbit shot out of sight, disappearing onto a path the boy had never noticed before, with a sign saying, "This way." The boy left the floating leaf and wandered toward the path, and there he saw a cat. The cat purred gently, and the boy asked, "Where did the rabbit go in such a hurry?" The cat responded, "He was in a rush to start his journey. It's time for you to start your journey too." The boy looks confused. He cried, "But I have been on a journey. I've seen many wonderful things. Some I understand and some I don't, like how that leaf floats on the water." Cat says, "Well, that's fascinating, but I'd hate for you to be late. You don't want to be left behind." The boy is still confused. "Behind? Who's ahead of me?" Cat says, "You wouldn't believe how many. You know, you're not the only one on this journey. Plenty ahead of you. Lots to follow." The boy began walking down the path. It stretched out far ahead of him. Notice how the cat takes off away from the path. Signs kept pointing him along the way. Some parts of the journey were easy. Some were very difficult. I would be very afraid crossing a bridge like that, with no handrails especially. Although he was following a well-worn path, he had a feeling growing in his gut that he was lost. The forest seemed to grow thicker. The soil was wet and muddy and made every step a struggle. Clouds had rolled in overhead, and the darkness closed in around him. After many difficult miles, he could not take another step. He noticed an oak leaf drift from the sky, sailing with ease. It swirled into the forest. The leaf disappeared behind a grove of trees. He stepped off the path to follow it. The boy found the leaf floating on a pond in a peaceful clearing, like a delicate boat on a dreamy voyage. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice. "Oh, there you are, I was afraid," said the cat. "Don't wander off like that. Now hurry, you're falling behind." It's hard to know why the cat wants the boy to be on the path. I'm curious about that. In response to this cat, because he trusts the cat, the boy ran and ran and ran, and as he ran, trying to catch up, he noticed the forest getting darker and thicker. The muddy ground became covered with water. He couldn't even see the path. He sloshed through the swamp until he came to a clearing in the forest. There he saw a bird. The bird said, "You look lost." The boy replied, "I don't think so. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm lost. I hadn't really thought about it." The bird said, "You hadn't thought about it? You must have some idea of where you're going, right?" "Well, I've been following the path. It seems as if a lot of people have taken it before me, and there have been many signs along the way, and a very helpful cat guided me back to the path whenever I started to wander." The crickets fell silent as the bird asked, "But where do you want to be going?" The boy looked around at the dark, tangled swamp. "I'm not sure, but I do know this isn't where I want to be. I guess I am lost." The bird said, "Ask yourself where it is you want to go, and then follow the signs you already know." "What signs? Where are they?" But the bird flew off into the cloudy night sky. The boy looked up into the sky, something he hadn't done in a very, very long time. He tried desperately to see where the bird had gone, and as he did, the clouds seemed to melt, and there above him was a star, a very bright star. The boy stared at the star and felt a pang in his heart, a tingling in his spine, a whisper in his ear. He could hear the star. The voice sounded so familiar. The boy began to walk toward the star. As he did, he noticed many other stars stretched out above him like a great big map. They had been there all along, waiting for him. He stopped and rested a moment, savoring his guiding stars. A voice croaked behind him. "What are you staring at? What's up there? What's so interesting?" The boy waded closer and answered, "Stars. I'm looking at the stars." The frog from deep in the mud said, "What stars? I see a dark sky and mist and low green clouds." The boy asked, "You don't see them? They're helping guide me out of the swamp. Would you like to come with me? The frog smiled. No, thank you. I am quite at home here in the bog. I swam here as a tadpole and grew up here, and here I will stay. The boy realized at that moment that everyone has a different journey, different signs and different stars, their own constellations. The boy left the frog, who croaked a farewell. Good luck on your journey. As he ventured beyond the swampy forest, the boy heard a cry. It was the rabbit who had been in such a hurry earlier, looking tired and hungry. She was stranded on a limb in the middle of the rushing river. The boy waded out, but realized the river was too deep. The rabbit was trapped. Then he saw an oak leaf drift by. It gave him an idea. The boy fashioned a boat out of swamp grass and twigs and rescued the rabbit. The boy smiled, having helped make the rabbit's journey easier. The boy looked up. He noticed that the star had become even brighter. He followed the star, and as he did, the muddy ground grew drier, then grassy, then soft and sandy. Finally, he came to rest atop a dune. There below him was a beach and a boat. The boy looked out toward the horizon. The star glowed steadily, reminding him that he still had a long journey ahead. But it was his own journey, his very own wonderful journey. The beginning.
Today in Children's Religious Exploration, we are going to be exploring the ways that we can follow that creativity, that spark in our heart to find new and interesting places to go. Children, grades ages 5 through 5th grade are invited to join me after we finish singing our song through these doors. Youth, you're invited to remain in the sanctuary to hear our service today. Join me in singing our community blessing.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
You know, ministry, the path to ministry is a lot like the journey of that boy in the book. There's this star that calls to you, that gives you that pang in your heart, and then much of the journey is through the dark forest and the swampland. And then if you're lucky, you hear that star, you see it again, and then you start the journey all over again from the beginning. So today is Timothy's last Sunday officially in the pulpit. They will be with us next week for our outdoor service and our annual meeting, but we wanted to honor their internship with an official service today. In our Unitarian Universalist Association, the search season for ministry is winding down right now. These past few months, congregations in search of ministers have been interviewing and selecting final candidates, just as this congregation did with me back in 2015. Sadly, many congregations at this moment find themselves coming up short without having made a match. There are just not enough ministers to go around. In part, this is because many, many more ministers are retiring than ever before, and not enough are coming up, but also because many mid-career ministers are dropping out of congregational ministry altogether, or new ministers are avoiding congregational ministry altogether because it's unsustainable. Burnout is high, pressure is high. So many congregations are experiencing high conflict, and ministers unfortunately become the targets and scapegoats of that conflict. And then couple that with a society that keeps telling us that productivity is our core value instead of healthy human thriving, despite our attempts to live and preach otherwise. The state of our Unitarian Universalist ministry is in peril, and it makes me sad. So to be a congregation who commits itself to being a teaching congregation, who partners with our neighbor congregation 100 miles down the road, who welcomes and supports and cares for and listens to a student minister on their path to ordination, who tries to counter society's paradigm and support their thriving above all else, is a very big deal. You are helping nurture and grow the future of our faith, and our faith needs it. That future we long for needs all the help it can get and all the energy and passion. It needs ministers who answer that call despite all of the obstacles and challenges surrounding them and in our world. Very often in our association, it's only the very large churches that can afford internships. Small and mid-sized churches often never get to experience the gift of sponsoring an intern. But the irony is that we have far more churches in our association that are small and mid-sized. That's where most of the openings are for new ministers. So the fact that our congregation has partnered with the Magic Valley UUs to share this internship means that our interns get a much wider experience of ministry in two very different settings, in the kinds of settings they are most likely to serve in their early careers. And both of our congregations were able to afford this internship thanks to a $10,000 grant by our Unitarian Universalist Association. But large churches are exciting and very cool, and they have a lot of resources and a lot more capacity. So I've always fretted about finding a candidate who would want to relocate to Idaho, especially now, for only 9 months. And, you know, we are in the news for all the wrong reasons. And I really tried to do my due diligence and warn Timothy, which felt counterproductive. But Timothy chose us, and Timothy chose Magic Valley. And together with their partner Shia, they drove all the way across the country to a brand new city where they didn't know anyone because they felt a call to a kind of ministry and justice work we had to offer. And I expect there were moments that Timothy could not see that star or hear that star. And in Timothy, we were blessed with a unique set of qualities and experiences not often found in interns. You see, Timothy was raised a Unitarian Universalist, having experienced the power of our OWL program and the amazing youth culture and rising quickly into youth leadership in their district, where back in the day, I don't know if we still do cons. Do we do cons? We used to have these district conferences where youth groups from other churches would come together for overnights. And the youth culture in Unitarian Universalism has long been a leading force in our faith tradition. And Timothy continued their UU connection in college at Wellesley, and then connected with Sanctuary Boston, a really incredible entrepreneurial UU community who supports a vibrant young adult population and more contemporary music-centered worship and small group worship. They were actually mentors to us as we began our Soulful Sundown services many years ago. And Timothy served on their board for 6 years. Timothy also served 2 different Unitarian Universalist churches in the Boston area as a part-time staff member doing field work while they were at Harvard Divinity School. And while here, Timothy has generously shared their insights and experiences with us in so many ways, from meaningful worship services. One of you just shared with me how meaningful the last worship service Timothy did was for you, and a quote that you captured in your own journal, supporting religious exploration classes, co-facilitating our Habits of White Supremacy Unlearning Circle, leading their own Chalice Circle, preaching and working with Magic Valley once a month, and Timothy always led with curiosity, asking questions and sharing insights, seeking to understand the quirks of church systems. All of these gifts, together with the fact that Timothy represents a generation of young adults whose voices and commitments to radical justice are so deeply needed in our Unitarian Universalist spaces and in our world, means we were blessed beyond measure. The path to ordained ministry is a long and complicated road. It is not for the faint of heart, as there are so many hurdles to jump and pieces one must complete and swamplands to navigate. I want to share with you just a little bit about some of the expectations and hurdles aspiring ministers must face. Here are some of the tasks for ministers on the path to ordination. In addition to completing a Master of Divinity and an accredited theological school, potential ministers must also complete a ministerial internship. They must complete at least 1 unit of clinical pastoral education, which is chaplaincy, hospital chaplaincy usually. They must put together a portfolio of essays, letters, and proof of competency in 7 areas of ministry. They must sit for a career assessment and a battery of psychological tests to ensure their fitness for ministry. And they must sit for an interview and deliver a sermon before our Ministerial Fellowship Committee of our Unitarian Universalist Association, who can grant them preliminary fellowship, which allows them to enter the search process. And then there are 3 more years of evaluations and continuing education, and that must happen in order to receive full fellowship. I thought I was able to complete these tasks fairly quickly under the circumstances, and even so, it took me 8 years from the time of entering seminary, It's an unfortunate Freudian slip right there. 8 years it took to receive final fellowship, full fellowship, we call it now. And I will tell you that after that moment, it feels like such a marathon ending moment. It's kind of tempting to downshift and never pick up another book about church or ministry again. Many of us who have been down that road and are serving congregations are always trying to remind ourselves and each other that ministerial formation is never complete. We must always be learning and growing. That is the true nature of this thing called ministry, of which we are all a part. So, Timothy, I want to leave you with some collected wisdom from some of our ministerial elders, colleagues who served for decades and have since retired. The Reverend Burton Carley says, "Sermons are not for information and entertainment, but for insight and inspiration." The Reverend Michael O'Kelly says, "Learn to sing well. Inspire others to sing well, and create a choir that really sings well." And we're glad we have given you that experience here. Dr. Michael Hennon says, "When you are up to your neck in alligators, remember your objective is to drain the swamp." The Reverend Dana Reynolds says, "Ask questions of each person you come in contact with, especially those questions that probe what is of greatest importance to them at the present time." and the Reverend Dr. Judith Campbell. Oh, I think Dr. Judith Campbell was like a new minister right at the time of the merger of our traditions of Unitarianism and Universalism in 1961. She says, make sure the bride's veil doesn't catch fire during the lighting of the unity candle and know what to do when it does. Always carry smelling salts for the groom. And don't do more than 2 weddings in one day. It's too hard to keep the name straight. So, fair wisdom there for you to take with you on your journey. Timothy, you have served us well. I hope we have served you well, too, in this weird and wild time in this world. Remember the great circle of collegial care, the great cloud of witnesses that surround you, and seek us out when you need some wisdom. Remember your call is always in you. Never stop listening. The future of our faith is in good hands, and we got to be a part of it. I hope we have the opportunity to keep tending that flame and that future of our faith for years to come. May it be so.
Thank you, Sarah. Each week, we take time to acknowledge the many joys among us and to grieve our many sorrows and losses, so that we might lift that burden for each other and receive the blessings of this community. It is through our sharing with one another that we forge deep bonds of community and connection. As we begin, please hold Darlene Pape, grandmother and mother of Laura and Jim Pape, who has left this world for the next great adventure. We feel so blessed to have her in our lives. If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to speak their name aloud into this community of love, that we may hold them with you. May the arms of this community hold all our joys and sorrows, those named and those that remain silent, close to our hearts. May we feel the grace that surrounds us and be transformed by the spirit of life and love, with warmth to celebrate our joys and with gentleness to soothe our aching hearts. Breathe with me. Fill your body with breath. Breathe into this sacred space. Breathe with this beloved community, filled with loving kindness. Breathe with wholeheartedness. Listen to what is calling you in the silence. You'd think we'd have those cues right by now. Thank you all for being on this journey with me. A year and a half ago, last January, I did a Zoom interview with Roger Sherman, Casey O'Connor, and Don Morishita from Magid Valley, as well as Reverend Sara. I would go on to do several other Zoom interviews with different congregations. But this one kept feeling different. It felt like a healthy congregation, and I could just feel it through the Zoom call. That folks were excited of possibility, but also bringing energy and matching it. That there was desire for connection, but also a strength of commitment. The way I kept kind of phrasing it in my brain was I felt like that Zoom call, that interview was pulling the ministerness out of me. Was pulling me into my best self, pulling me into showing up as the minister that I could be with these two congregations. It felt exciting and honestly terrifying. I went downstairs and told my partner, Shia, I'm kind of worried we might be moving to Idaho. Shia was excited the Zoom call had gone well, but also a little nervous too. And for several months, I found it really hard to put into words why. Because people asked me why a lot. About a quarter of folks would get really excited to tell me that Boise is a really up and coming place and there's all sorts of cool things there and everyone's moving there. And then any LGBTQ person that I told I was moving to Idaho would go, how are you feeling about that? And I didn't know. I felt excited and I felt nervous. I grew up in Wisconsin and knew what it was like to live with the fear in the back of your spine, to have that concern just rooted in your body. It took a decade of living in Boston to kind of shake it, and I did feel nervous about would it come back, and if it did, what would I do with that? But then I started to find some words for why. The Reverend Gretchen Halley, in a sermon at the end of the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly last year, gave a sermon about the promise of UUism, talking about where Unitarian Universalism is needed, where is the space, the place that our faith has the most force, is the best balm, is a source of strength. Because it is different in New England. Having served congregations in Boston and been a part of them, it's lovely, but they don't need it in the same way that we do here. We're just gonna be honest. Growing up in Wisconsin in the Unitarian Universalist congregation there, I knew what it felt like to have the congregation be a space of solace, a space of comfort, a space of force, the place you went to get your soul renourished, to find people similar to you with similar values, and then to work for justice together, rooted in that space. I had a sense that this congregation would be that too, and luckily I was right. And you all welcomed me with open arms, with enthusiasm. I got to connect a little bit preaching over the summer, And then Shia and I did a whirlwind 11-day drive across the country, and folks were here to help, to set up. You donated furniture, you helped drive us places, you moved furniture upstairs, you built and rebuilt different bed frames. It was exhausting and also beautiful. We got here the last day of Pride and got to be surprised again by this community. I know for a lot of folks this year, this past September of Pride was reckoning with fear and threat. But also to me, what it felt like was persistence, was creating and celebrating love despite what is around. This welcoming openness that showed up from this congregation and was an invitation to just get stuck in, to just start. My first sermon was my second Sunday here. And through so many different parts of ways of connecting with this congregation, I felt love from you and have been able to grow with you. With preaching, with the Chalice Circle, our Habits of White Supremacy Culture group, serving as an observer or a member of the board and on other committees, working with staff. It's just been an exciting experience to be able to be in it in the up close. Gradually to walk into a space knowing I have the voice to be here, I have the knowledge to be here, I can show up as a minister here. Our Habits of White Supremacy Culture learning and unlearning group I got to be a part of the work of this congregation that had been going on for years. Sara and I spent much time thinking through how do we live the values that we're talking about as we facilitate a group. We made facilitation commitments. We had a covenant that everyone agreed to, but our facilitation commitments were things that Reverend Sara and I agreed to as holders and creators of a space, to not be living into that spirit of urgency that we talked about as a group, to reject perfectionism, be able to change plans in the middle, to have space for human bodies and human relationships, that we would end on time and we would start when people were there. That we would have food, we would have space, we would have room to talk and share. The check-in time ended up being usually the first half of the time together. And at first we had a moment of, is this too much? And then gradually realized it was just right, because that was a huge part of the processing time of people getting to connect and explore and listen together. After 2 or 3 sessions, a participant told me that this felt different from most of the other UU spaces they'd been a part of. And I held that as a deep compliment, as a way to challenge and explore and grow who we are and how we are together. In my Chalice Circle, there's several members of you here today. It was a joint online Zoom Chalice Circle with members both from Magic Valley and from Booth. And over, I was struck by the deep searching that folks bring, the longing for connection. I'd been part of other small groups before, and even had shown up to them as in myself as like, there's probably a spiritual or theological reason I'm here, but I'm just looking to make some friends or have some other people to talk to or just like need to be deeper in this community. And there was and always is some of that, but our very first session, I think the check-in question was something like, what are you bringing and what are you leaving behind? And everyone showed up saying their deep spiritual need that they were bringing, why they showed up, what drew them, what did they need from this group? How did they want to be together? How did they want to explore it and connect together? And I just meant, like, how was your day? But over and over, that small group surprised me, challenged me to grow some of my own spiritual practice, and pushed boundaries of connection, being able to show up together. This congregation was also willing to share me with Magic Valley. For you all, it did mean that I missed out on some holidays or rituals, but it got to be an experience of building a relationship with the congregation as their minister. Magic Valley doesn't have a other minister, and so I got to be there as the minister presence, which is a privilege that a lot of my peers don't have in their internships. I got to learn how to build that relationship, how to grow those relationships, how to understand what my role is, and how I can show up, where to push and where to be softness, how to build a relationship through preaching. I had the special opportunity to craft and deliver the Christmas service, the Christmas Eve service. Had the opportunity to think about what do people need to hear at this time of year, and to deliver that sermon, which was so special. And a lot of my peers posted on Facebook at the same time, kind of supporting their senior minister, but not having the opportunity to do it themselves. So I want to say thank you for being willing to share as well. And then our worship here together with you all has been building new relationships as well, trying on new things, figuring out new ways of planning or delivering sermons behind the scenes. We've built new rituals together. We had a Halloween parade. We had a rock communion, which Jem and I just made up. But it was cool. We got to do a spiritual reflection and connection ritual on what would have been the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. We got to explore gender and knowing our own truths and being called into that together, leaning into what fulfills our own selves most. And that service in particular for me was an opportunity of new vulnerability. One of the congregations the first congregation I served before seminary was a UU Christian church, and I got really good at Bible explanation sermons. You heard it a bit 2 weeks ago when I told you about Daniel and the lion's den. But I would walk through how to, like, the different feelings characters might be having within the story, and to try them on. And it made an engaging sermon, but it also meant that I didn't have to say anything personal about myself. But that service, at the invitation of Mike Lemieux, connecting with Jonathan Dover and Philip Stucker, was an invitation into connection and vulnerability, into inviting others into crafting the worship service and sharing the microphone, and was new vulnerability for me. When I started here, and I've said in many jobs, I am not going to do any gender sermons. You can have a different person, someone who makes their career out of that, but just because of my own gender history, I don't need to be the one doing that. That was kind of a line I set out at the start of this. And instead had the opportunity by being called to support others and sharing those stories, to share my own story. And I talked about this with my internship committee, but as I was preaching, there was a moment of realization for me that this congregation had shown up over and over and over again in every way possible to support trans folks in this legislative session, to build an inclusive congregation, to make sure we are living what we say. And I felt this relaxing, being held by this congregation in a way I'd been holding my own tough shoulders about. Feeling that this congregation kept showing up and saying, we are trustworthy and able to hold you. And in that service and in that sermon, feeling myself being willing to relax enough and say, yes, I can let you hold me. The next leg of this journey, the next forest or lake or whatever to traverse is a one-year chaplaincy position at the University of California, San Francisco. As Sara was talking about the different things that you have to do to be a UU minister, she mentioned one unit of hospital chaplaincy usually. And that was gonna be the plan. I was gonna do that this summer. That's part of why the service was so early in the year. I was maybe gonna have to be in Portland next Sunday. It was gonna be the plan. We'd do that, go back to Boston, return to what our life had been, Shia and I, go through the interview process and then go into search and maybe move again then. Funnily enough, this also had been the plan for the internship, that I wasn't gonna need to move. There would be something in the Boston area, or New England maybe, but our lives could keep going how they had been going. And then gradually, there was a different star. There was a different arrows pointing which way, a different moment of going off of the path. And so instead of one unit, this chaplaincy position is actually 4 units, a full year as sort of a higher level chaplaincy learner student person. The phrase for it is resident, but that's not very precise. And that this gets to be a new challenge, a new adventure. If you asked me a year and a half ago, I know I've said this in many sermons at this point, but I was the person that was like, do you want to go on vacation in the exact same place we went last year? Do the same thing over. That was nice enough, let's do it again. And that just feels totally different now. I've seen more of the country, the world, of people in this past year than I have in a lot of my life. Had the opportunity to try on new things and new ways of being. And so this option to choose a year-long program instead of, and going into the field of chaplaincy to explore it and spend kind of a similar amount of time to what I did for this internship is a new deviation from the path, is a new adventure and also new risk, a new spot away from what the plan had been. And I knew starting out that I wasn't a person who usually stuck to the plan, and also that my greatest moments of learning and growth and building a life I want have been the moments of deviating from the plan. But putting off ordination for another year to do this, moving my family to San Francisco instead of going back to our life in Boston, was yet another moment of risk. And also a moment that I felt support and connection from this congregation. I think 2 or 3 times in our Habits of White Supremacy culture group, I would get emails about interviews right before the group started and talk through them with folks. As I'm going into that from this experience with you all, I'm taking with me, I think first and foremost, a different sense of confidence, of being able to walk into a place and be like, yes, I'm the minister. Yes, I have the expertise to deal with this. Yes, let's talk about that problem. Being able to rest more easily in that spot, have it feel more comfortable than a pair of shoes I'm trying on, but more like a pair of shoes that are mine. Having more experience building deep relationships with people quickly, as opposed to providing connective or spiritual care to friends or with long-time relationships, but being able to go deep with folks quickly. Being able to think about an entire community and what a community needs, and how does the world that is going on, not even outside, but just in all of it, how does that impact what we need right now? In that first interview a year and a half ago, one of the questions I was asked was, what do I think is the future of Unitarian Universalism? And that is a question that happens in minister job interviews, but minister job interviews and chaplaincy job interviews are very different than other job interviews. And I paused for a minute and said that I wasn't sure, but what I wanted was a Unitarian Universalism I could feel proud of. One that steps out of its legalese and bureaucracy, its Robert's Rules of Order, one that more deeply connects to spirituality, connects to the needs that people, the spiritual needs that people are bringing. One that doesn't just affirm and promote this long set of words, but can figure out how to live into those words, how to show up for them, how to really live what we mean. And in February, or January, I guess, the UUA Article 2, which is part of the bylaws, revisions committee put out a new set of UU values. Both Reverend Sara and I preached on these in February, and they were also featured in our annual giving drive. These values, specifically not in a specific order, are justice, interdependence, equity, generosity, pluralism, transformation, and then love at the deep center of all of them. When asked to describe why love was the center, the UUA board talked about love being the unspoken word that existed behind all of the 7 or 8 principles that we have now. The unspoken commitment, the phrase, the meaning, the why behind why we affirm and promote these different things. Because we love each other, because we love the world, because we feel a responsibility from our love and connection with each other and the world. That messiness of our covenant, a covenant sometimes is thought of between people or between a person or group and God. But as Unitarian Universalists, I feel like our covenant is between us and the universe. And what motivates that is love. These new values, instead of principles, each come with a phrase that kind of describes them, and they kept all the greatest hits of the 7 principle language. If you have a favorite phrase, it's probably in there in some ways, so don't worry. It comes with a descriptive word, but it also comes with a covenant for each one of these principles, a way of saying this is our responsibility of how we want to live this out. The request was for more verbs. Instead of affirm and promote these different ideas, what does it mean for what we do, who we are, how we live together and within our communities? And reading through all of this material in preparation for, I preached first at Magic Valley, I just had this moment of this is the possibility of the Unitarian Universalism that I want to be proud of. The youth culture that Sara alluded to that felt grounded in these values and trying to step out of some of the bureaucracy of how we tend to run our communities, because that's the structure that we know and have been handed down. But it felt like that energy, it felt like that joy and that passion. And so I did not expect a year and a half later to be able to say, we have a way that we are moving forward on what the future of this faith is together, of what we are committed to together. And I think it's really beautiful. And I want to say thank you to all of you for showing up and being a part of this. Jean Repstra, in I think the book is called Thematic Preaching. It's frequently assigned in UU seminaries. I was reading over some of it for a sermon preaching class I taught at Magic Valley, and she talks about the authority of the UU pulpit, the authority of this microphone, of this space, of your attention, comes from the congregation's willingness, comes from the congregation's offer. Because we all have equal access to the divine, to the truth. Our ministers are ordained by the people, and the people decide who speaks at the pulpit. The authority is extended by the congregation in the offer to preach. But it's met in the trying. The way that the preacher meets and honors the extension of that pulpit, of that space to speak, is not in showing up and doing it perfectly, is not in having all the answers, is not knowing everything about the future, about the divine. That's not what we expect of our ministers and preachers. But instead, the way you respect and respond to that offer is in showing up and trying, which just felt like the most beautiful metaphor for an internship. And so I want to thank you for extending that offer and for meeting me in the trying, in the imperfect, in the messy, and in the utterly beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to have a little moment for prayer and meditation. We'll start with some silence. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of all that is within and between us, be with us here now as we are with each other. Be with us in the utter beauty of connection, of the wonder of community, especially when it is a community we have worked to build. Be with us in knowing the incredible health of this community, the joy and vibrance of it, the beating heart that it is for our faith, tradition, and denomination. Be with us in knowing that joy deeply. Spirit of life, be with us in the messiness, in the work it takes to build that healthy congregation. Be with us in the showing up, the extending an opportunity, and the showing up to try over and over again. And Spirit of life, Spirit of love, be with us in the messy joy and sadness of goodbyes, of being able to honor and recognize the incredible gifts we have given to each other, be able to hold that as solid, and also know that the relationship will shift. For all of this, we pray. Blessed be.
Thanks so much, Timothy, for your words and your presence among us. In an internship, our interns are required to have a committee that they get to reflect with, and that ultimately fills out an evaluation of them for our Ministerial Fellowship Committee. And so for our shared internship, that committee is comprised of both Boise members and Magic Valley members. You heard Timothy mention our Boise members were Roger Sherman and Casey O'Connor, with a late addition of Eileen Gettings, I understand, at the end. So I'm going to invite Roger to come up on behalf of that internship committee. We have a farewell blessing to offer Timothy. Timothy, choosing us was such an act of courage, moving across the country into a conservative, hostile, red state. It was truly an act of deep faith. Faith in us and in Magic Valley, faith in yourself, and faith in Unitarian Universalism and the power of our saving message. We are grateful that you took that leap of faith.
An internship is like taking the road less traveled. You drop in, and our path is diverted from our usual well-worn route. For a few months, as we are invited to experience your presence, your wisdom, your care, and you invite us on your journey of learning and growth, yes, we watch you change and grow over these months, but so have we, because of the ministry you have shared and nurtured with us.
Ordination may still be a ways off, but we will be there to honor you and celebrate with you when the time comes, and we look forward to that day in the future when we can welcome you back to this pulpit as Reverend Ellis. I am so happy Unitarian Universalism will get to count you among our ministerial ranks. I know you will continue to serve with great passion, with an open heart, with grace, and with a deep well of love. I invite you to come up here as you take this blessing with you as you embark on the next part of your journey as a chaplain resident at the University of California, San Francisco.
May you continue to grow in your faith, honoring the lifetime of Unitarian Universalism and the breadth of your experience that fueled your call. Serving this faith with a vision for what we can become, knowing you use are far from perfect. And we need voices like yours to keep shining the light on that path toward wholeness, healing, and transformation.
May you hold on to hope, even when hope is hard to find. May you find that wellspring of care that helps others know that they are loved, the joy that beckons, that love abounds.
May you always hold dear the gift of vulnerability and revel in the creative capacity that lives in you, sharing it far and wide. May you keep taking risks, knowing that they will always feel more risky than they really are. May your depth of love for humanity, for all beings, keep you rooted, nourishing you through the difficult times.
May you never forget the whispers or that shining starlight of your call, of your own heart's longing, for justice, for equality, for radical welcome and love for all. The call that led you to this path, that led you to us with all its twists and turns and unknown obstacles, knowing there is more unknown that lies ahead, and knowing that we will be with you always. May you always be a blessing and welcome joy on your journey.
I was wondering where you were hiding.
So we invite you all to rise in body or spirit as you are able to join in singing together our final hymn, Come Sing a Song with Me.
I invite you to place your hands over your heart if they're not already there for our closing blessing. We extinguish the flame of our chalice, but not our hope for the future, our courage in the face of crisis or turmoil, or the love we share with all the world. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.